Right, hello, that's it, we're live, and apologies for those of you who have been waiting the last 4 minutes or so. The joys of technical issues when trying to get the webinar to go live. We're broadcasting this on StreamYard, and because I haven't broadcast something on here for a while, it decided to disconnect from all of our social media accounts. So I have just been swearing a lot at my computer, trying to get it online as quickly as possible. But enough about that. So hi everybody, I am Kristjan, one of the co-founders at the Depository. I'm joined today by Rich Abbots from Inventory Hive.
Hi, how are you doing?
And Michael Hill from TDS.
Hi guys.
So what we're going to be talking to you guys about today is we're going to be talking about how an evidence-based approach to deposit deductions leads to just generally an easier, more fluid process for you as an agent, but it also means matters get concluded more quickly, deposits get returned quickly, and just generally everyone has a much nicer time. I think the reality is for a lot of tenants out there, particularly, they feel like the end of tenancy deposit deduction process is a bit of a wild west. They feel a bit, I mean, I think most tenants know there's a little bit of law sort of sat there. I don't think they quite realize the array of laws that are sat there protecting tenants. But I think the presumption most tenants have, and this is either because they've already had a bad experience, and let's be honest, if you rent long enough, you're gonna have a bad experience eventually, whether it's a private landlord or an agent. Somewhere along that line is going to do something at best just a bit slapdash and slow and not great, and at worst, you know, trying to take unjustified fees from a tenant. So either they've experienced that personally, or they've heard the Chinese whispers about the Machiavellian evil tactics of landlords and their conspiring letting agents. So yeah, really, what we've done with the Depository is we've taking that from an agent's perspective, we've really looked at that process, and the reality is it does become very emotionally charged. You know, like it was what started us building this project was really actually us looking at that psychology. You know, we have, I'd like to think, a better relationship than most agents with their tenants. We've always placed our tenant satisfaction enormously high. And I think our average sort of tenant satisfaction rating over the last sort of 5 years has been about 95%, which isn't bad. But what really triggered this process for us was it didn't matter how good that relationship was or how long we'd had that tenant in a property, whether it was a couple of weeks, a couple of months, or a couple of weeks or months. We'd never have a tenant for a couple of weeks or months, whether it was 1 year or 3, 4, 5 years. It didn't matter how good and how friendly that relationship was. The moment we served notice or they gave notice to us, there was this very noticeable and sometimes just point blank said outright, oh, here we go. You know, you've been lovely up until now, but this is where you're going to shaft us. And I think for us, apart from anything else, we just really wanted to challenge that psychology. We really wanted to find a way that how do we solve that problem? You know, and I think the reality is that all too often emotion's brought into it, and it's easy to say keep the emotion out of it. Of course it is. There's money involved, and moving is meant to be one of the most stressful things you do in your life. Rich, how's moving? You've just moved
I'm
this weekend.
Oh,
Rich, I can't hear you.
Oh, should be on. My mic should be on.
Why are we not?
There we go.
I can hear you, Rich.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, it said.
Why can we not hear Rich?
Can you hear me?
Pause on the fluidity of this, webinar. We've got you.
So you can hear me all right, Michael, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
You're in the studio. I can't hear Michael either.
I'll just put a chat in. I'll put a quick comment in for Kristjan.
Okay. Apologies, everyone. Bear with us whilst I try and figure out why we can't hear anything. Oh, I can hear you all. Okay, well, we're just going to work on the assumption that I can't hear you, which is interesting because I don't know how I'm going to run a webinar where I can't hear what my guests are saying. Is my earphone? No, I'm not being a moron. My earphone volume isn't off. I mean, Everyone bear with me. I'm going to switch off my headset and switch it back on again and see if it solves this lip read. Good suggestion, John. That could lead to some very interesting understandings of what these guys have been saying. So bear me 1 second, everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a joy, isn't it? I'm really smashing it out the park.
Technology, eh?
I know. Well, I suppose in response to Kristjan's comment, how is moving house? It's a hideous process.
Try saying something.
I'm speaking now, Kristjan.
Oh, joy, I still can't hear you. This is fantastic. Okay, hold on. Bear with. Let's try taking off the headset. Try now, guys.
Can you hear now, Kristjan?
Yeah. Weird. Okay. Bear with us 1 second, everyone. I've had to pull this onto our speaker and microphone, so we're just going to turn off the office sound system in the background. Apologies for ringing phones and stuff. The joys of live broadcast.
I suppose on the upside, Kristjan, at least people know this is definitely live.
It's. I don't think there's any shadow of a doubt there.
No.
Late start and yeah, the farce of me not being able to hear anything. But right.
So you were asking me the question as well, weren't you, Kristjan? What it's like to move house, which I think anybody that's ever moved house knows that the further you get away from the house move, the more you get over it. But when it's close or when it's coming up, it's very raw, isn't it? And it is an emotional thing, irrespective of how smoothly it goes. It's an emotional roller coaster, isn't it?
I mean, you enjoyed it so much, Rich. You did it twice this week.
I did it twice. Yeah,
I moved and once for the in-laws.
Yeah, once for my in-laws who hadn't even taken their bed down. Bless them.
They knew you were coming, Rich.
I know. Yeah, I didn't say bless them on the day. I've got to say, but no, they had some trouble, and if I hadn't have been there to save the day, then they'd have probably still been there now. But hey.
So look, I think, talking about the evidence-based thing, I mean, obviously, Rich, inventory Hive, where did the idea of inventory Hive come from? Was that out of an experience as a tenant?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we rented for a number of years, and on a few occasions we had bad experience with the checkout process, and a lot of that was down to the fact that there wasn't a great inventory performed. More importantly, there wasn't a way of engaging with that inventory when moving in, and obviously that leads to this. You've caused this issue. Obviously, my argument, as a lot of tenants' arguments, is it was like that when I moved in. And as you've said, the only way you can really overcome that is by having a clear, transparent process. And I think with technology these days as well, it's about being able to engage with the tenant in a convenient way. And let's face it, printed inventories or doing it via DocuSign with no means of feeding back, it gets very sort of disjointed and very messy. And our approach was we wanted to have a platform that had that sort of whole audit trail piece, automated via sort of emails and text messages, but it would ultimately creates a report that everybody's brought into because they've had an easy, convenient way in which to engage with it. And obviously
right? I think like most agents, we spend years having inventories done by a separate company, done on typically a Word document that arrived. We sent that off to the tenants, and they had 28 days to make notes, which would normally result in an email back to us of anything from a couple of comments to a page of comments, and anything from a couple of photos to 100 photos going, here's all the stuff we've made note of that wasn't in the inventory. And then you've got that challenge of, like you said, you've got to review that to make sure the tenant's not taking the mick. Are they making up stuff to sort of cover them for the future? And then likewise, when it comes to the end, that lucky inventory clerk that gets their inventory and all those notes and photos printed off or put in a Dropbox for them. Joy, right?
And of course, the big problem with that as well is you could, as you say, you could have several comments, but maybe 2 photos. So then you have a mix of comments that aren't supplemented by a photo that goes with it. And over time, we realized that the way to overcome that is if someone's adding a specific comment, it should be mandatory for them to add a photo. But tenants don't necessarily want to be downloading an app and logging in. They don't want to be sending a million emails. They certainly don't want to be running around with paper copies. So we overcome that with a simple web page that can be used on a phone where they can add comments and take snaps. And therefore, you get that engagement at the beginning which in turn, with a platform like obviously the Depositary, you kind of really join at the dots and make it seamless. And as you say, you take that emotion out of it, where it's not this long phone call where you kind of at the beginning of the tenancy where you're saying, well, you left it in a filthy state. You don't have that emotional aspect to it, because as you the great title of the webinar today is about fact-based, and make it objective and then take that emotion away. And I think if you can achieve that, then from a tenant satisfaction perspective, they're going to feel like they've been treated like a customer. And I think for too long now in the industry as a whole, a lot of tenants haven't always felt like they're treated like a customer. They're more sort of,
I think they're quite often dismissed, right? They're quite often dismissed. And I think all too often agents and landlords, or quite particularly landlords, I think very, very, very quick to forget that is the tenant's money.
Yes.
And I think if their monies were handled by any supplier in the way that they handle tenants' monies, I think you'd know about it. So it is an interesting one. Now, Michael, obviously you're at the TDS. You get to see a lot more of it than we do. You must have some pretty interesting and hair-raising stories about emotion that's come to the fore in dispute negotiations.
Yeah, I think it's as you said earlier, really, Kristjan. You get that, everything's fine and dandy across the course of the tenancy, and as it comes to the end of the tenancy, that's when relationships can break down, and that's when communication breaks down. And I think that reiterates the point about it really needing to be a fact-based and an evidence-based process, because that's what we're looking at here. Because often the parties are in a position where they can't negotiate and they can't communicate, or they've done all that they can, and they're now in a position where they need a decision. And having that evidence and that preparedness, I guess, at the start of the tenancy and throughout the tenancy allows for a fair and transparent decision at the end. We've seen, I guess, physical evidence sent to us, urine-stained carpet cutouts, infested carpet cutouts, which we obviously don't want in the head office.
No.
I know you guys are telling me some amazing stories about things that have turned up in the post.
Yeah. Well, people obviously ask if we can do a property inspection, which isn't our role often, because we come into the process, a month down the line, after the tenancy's ended, after the checkout's been done, after the negotiations, new tenants have moved in. The moment's passed, but we do get I guess, like I say, cutouts of carpets and things sent to us, which we can't do anything with. It's not great evidence, and that's why it's so important for these documents to be prepared so accurately, so that we can reach the decision that's fair to both parties. Sometimes it's the landlord that's a deduction is justified, and sometimes it's not. So
I think that was something that really came across. We when we started building the Depositary, for those who don't know our early journey, before we put a pen to paper, I mean, other than a very, very basic mock-up, we got in touch with TDS and we sat down and we very much started talking through that process. And again, what we wanted this to do was to solve problems for everyone that was buying into it. And so, we had a lot of discussions, and that's when we started hearing these amazing stories of interesting items being posted to the offices, but also some fairly volatile exchanges at times.
Mm-hmm.
And then also looking at your agents who do really well, where their disputes are, they have very few disputes percentage-wise, and those disputes that do come in are very well documented, very well evidenced, and it just makes your jobs easier in terms of, great, there's the contract,
exactly, yeah.
There's the evidence, there's the invoice. It's whatever, it's 3 years old, so we apply this discount, and bosh, that's what we're willing to do. It enables you guys to adjudicate in a very confident way and also quickly. And everyone feels they've got a sort of legitimate outcome of that. So great. So obviously we sort of talked in principle about that. I think what's a good opportunity for us now is if I do a screen share and pull up the platform. I'm just going to show, I've set up a tenancy on the Depositary where we're at checkout day, and we've prepared a little inventory Hive report. Bearing in mind the problems we've had with my microphone, I'm intrigued to see if the tech gods are with us today, or if this is going to also cause some interesting shenanigans. But we're going to do that. I'm going to click share. Give me 1 second. So share screen. We'll do share entire screen, and there we go. Great. So hopefully you can all see the screen right now. So this is within the depository platform. This is a dashboard for an individual tenancy. And basically, we've got a tenancy on here. The checkout's been booked, the clean's been booked, and we've arrived at the day of checkout. So the checkout, what you can't see here, has already been scheduled for 8 o'clock this morning. So what our platform now wants to know is, has that checkout taken place? So I'm going to hop across now to Inventory Hive. We've got a checkout report all parked up and ready to go. So in there, just so you guys know what we've put in here, we've put in limited stuff. So we've put in meter readings for gas, electricity, and water, and we've put in 2 maintenance issues. So we've put in a dirty oven, and in there is a brief description, a photo, a proposed amount, and also an overgrown garden. Similar thing. So we're going to submit that report. That's now in there, and if the tech gods are being kind to us today, it's going to let me refresh this tab. Maybe give it a few seconds and I'll refresh it again. Oh, the tech gods are not being kind today, are they? Sometimes it does get queued, so it does sometimes take 30 seconds to a minute for a report to pull through. Normally, an agency user wouldn't be sat in front of their computer desperately refreshing the moment an inventory clerk submits their report. This isn't quite a fair representation of the timeline.
No, absolutely, and you know, just to back Kristjan up on that one, there, you know, we do have mutual clients already using this this facility, so. And obviously, it's designed that when the tenant's responsibility is assigned to an issue within an item inside Inventory Hive, it will effectively pass the photo, the description, all the reference to the inventory as well. It will automatically pass that over into the depository, which then allows the depository to take the reins from there and do the communication piece, so it becomes automated. And in terms of actual integrations that save time, as I thought, and this is kudos to Kristjan and Carla over at Depository, it would be easy sometimes to be steered by the agent and say, actually, we want to save time by populating address and tenancy data from a CRM. Now, that's great, and of course it does save time, but actually the time it takes to type a property address in and a tenant's name and copy and paste it, you're probably talking a minute or two. But actually the double entry that is often you know, transacted by an agent at checkout from the inventory to the checkout process is so labor intensive and time consuming that that's where you really want to have the wins from an integration, and that's obviously something that we've worked on to make that happen. So whilst Inventory Hive has its own checkout process, it doesn't go anywhere near the level of communication and referring to tenancy agreements in the way the depository does. Depository literally, you know, takes the reins on that stuff, and we know from, you know, some of the you know, the time elements that you've tracked, Kristjan. You know, I mean, how much time has that been saving agents on average when that process happens?
So, I mean, overall, we estimate this whole process takes agents between 3 to 4 man hours. We've got it approximately down to about 30 minutes. And then if you plug in you guys, Inventory Hive, that's you know, at least another 15 minute saving on that. And it really depends, you know, all of these are sort of guesstimates. Actually, people keep on telling me off saying that figure's too low. Because if you think as an agent, if you think how long it typically takes you to go through a checkout report, now maybe your inventory clerk highlights things in yellow so you can skim through something pretty quickly, but you've still got to identify what those issues are, type them up into the report, you know, and compose your email, etc., etc. So the nice thing with this is, you know, what we say is really, if the clerk is allocating responsibility for the tenant on all the issues or all the potential issues, then really agents using your guys' integration should never have to read a checkout report again, because what our system does, it captures that checkout report. It pulls across all the meter reading data. It pulls across any issues that have been flagged as potential tenant liability. And it pulls those into the platform. Now, I'm going to be honest, for some reason that's not pulling through today, and I think I know why. I think that's human error with me. When you're doing a checkout, you allocate it to a tenancy, and we had 2 identical property records come up. So I had to take a roll of the dice and pick one. I clearly picked the wrong one. So whilst we're talking away here, I'm just very quickly replicating the data that would be pulled across within the platform.
Yeah. While you do, if you want, Kristjan, while you're doing that, I'll just pick up on that as well, because we've been putting together over at Inventory Hive at the moment. We've been putting together timelines of what it is to produce an inventory, and I think sometimes it's the misconception that doing an inventory or doing a check-in is the time you spend inside the house putting all the information together. Well, actually, we know that if you take a check-in inventory as an example, it's not just the time you spend in the house creating the report. It starts from the moment you get that instruction, or that that tenant's due to move in. You would then be populating the address, gathering information about alarm codes, accessing the property, then actually going and performing the inventory, then coming back. If you're printing it, that takes time. If you're going to get tenant feedback, that can take time. So the whole process from start to finish, if you actually track it, and we've actually had clients that have tracked it against their previous process, and when you actually break it down per tenancy, that's where you can really understand just how much time it saves. And obviously time saving is one of the elements of it, but you also want those robust results. And it'd be really interesting over time, because obviously the relationship we've had with Depository is a fairly new one. Over time, it would be great to understand from check-in through to checkout. Obviously, you don't measure, we're not going to record the whole length of the tenancy in between, but if you took those 2 touch points at the start and at the end, and then worked out just how much time was saved, I think it's going to be quite substantial. It's a lot of staff hours that can be saved. And in turn, of course, that allows agents to spend more time on the things they do best and building relationships and so on. And I think this is a key thing now, and I think that's something the Depository, you guys have done really, really well, is getting that across to people, that focus on where you can save the most time, and that's where PropTech can step in and and do the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah, and I think, look, good PropTech works on all sides of the equation, right? So for agents, it's about making your job easier, saving time, removing tasks where you don't add value, repetitive data entry tasks that are just the same thing. So our whole tenancy, our whole application process has a chain of emails. There's something like 80 different emails on our platform, some for landlords, some for agents, some for tenants, and that all depends on the journey a tenancy goes on. But all those prompts are there. The last 4 weeks of the tenancy, the tenants get a weekly email. 4 weeks to go, this is what you guys should do this week. 3 weeks to go, this is what you should do this week. And again, agents have full access to that. You customize that so it aligns with your process. Because again, we all operate in different markets. We all have different requirements. Some of us, it will include, really high-end, full professional cleans and XYZ, and other ones, it's quite basic, just give it a domestic clean, clear your rubbish and hand the keys back, So the point is, it aligns with what your process is. But for an agent, we're trying to save the time. For the tenant, it was about transparency, understanding the process, and making the deductions, as we've talked about, removing the emotion, getting rid of those emails that would start off, oh, it was so disappointing to see XYZ, or after being so good at looking after you as a tenant, it's very upsetting to see how tenants don't care if their agent or landlord's disappointed. You're not their parents. They don't want to know. And actually, the moment you start an email like that, you've instantly dialed up the emotion factor by 10. They genuinely don't care. All they want to know is contractually and legally, what do you want to deduct, and how are you supporting, you know, how are you substantiating that claim?
Yeah, I think as well, Kristjan, just to touch on that, you can't underestimate the value of that correspondence you're sending to the tenants with, you know, a month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the tenancy left, because we talked about communications breaking down, but it's that goes to show that the agent or landlord, you know, it's not a confrontational end to the tenancy. You know, there's support there. You're trying to say to the tenant, remember to clean the property, remember to remove all your rubbish, and you give them those tips so that at the end of the tenancy, we don't see disputes where the tenant says, well, I wasn't aware I had to do that, because they've been advised to do it all, and therefore you've reduced the chances of there being a deposit deduction as much as you reasonably can. And if the tenant has therefore then failed to fulfill their obligations, that's when the deposit deduction will come, rather than them being a bit blindsided, I guess.
That's it. And because it's an automated system, you know every single one of those emails is going out. You know, pretty much every agent I know doesn't use us. I don't know of a CRM who has anything more than a workflow. At best, I've seen where you can set up like literally a checklist of what your steps are. You know, send moving out email, send pack, etc. The best thing I've seen is a checklist where you tick, but it still isn't automated. You still have to physically send those emails, write them up, send them up, etc. And as soon as you involve a human, that at some point that will get skipped. Someone will be ill, someone will go on holiday, someone will just get a phone call at that wrong moment in time and forget, whatever it is. With our system, it's that consistency. And like you said, Michael, it's the whole language for tenants. It's all about, we want to give your deposit back to you as fast as possible with as few as possible deductions. And the way we do that is if you do this, this, and this. And like you said, again, you know, agents and their landlords can now talk to tenants who've used this platform in a very strong, confident manner that they've had their held hand up until that point. You know, if they didn't clean it, you know, I think one of the classic things we see with more and more agents on it now is, and we get this occasionally, is you have a tenant move out, they haven't cleaned it well enough, and they're like, oh, okay, let us know when we can pop back in to do the rest of the cleaning. It's like, no, you had your list. You know, and another thing we do within our platform is the cleaning stage. When the tenants book the clean, or when they get the email that asks them to submit what cleaning arrangements they've made, and when they go in actually onto our platform to submit it, both of those, there is a PDF document. If the agents create one and upload it, which we recommend they do, there is a standalone cleaning terms and conditions document, which is typically a one-page document saying, this is what you need to do. Yes, that is probably in your tenancy agreement, but why should a tenant have to go and trawl through 20 or 30 pages to find it? Why should they go and trawl through 15 documents you gave them when they moved in? Let's just make it easy and accessible. They can go and verify it. They can go and do the tenancy agreement if they want to validate what is on that document is true. You know, and then also in the deduction stage, we've got contract clauses that you can reference. So what I've done, guys, whilst we've been having a bit of a chat there, I have manually pulled through some of the stuff. So I'm gonna share my screen again now, hop across to the app, and really what would happen had I connected the correct inventory with our Inventory Hive account, this would now be saying, please review the deposit deductions pulled in from Inventory Hive. So what the platform's done is it's captured the checkout report, which is here in the platform. Depending on how you configure the platform, that is either instantly distributed to your landlords and tenants the moment it's put in the system, or you can now choose, we literally released this new feature on Monday, as an agent, you can now choose to postpone releasing that report to either party until you advise them on proposals. So I think most agents are happy for the checkout report to go instantly out to their landlord whilst they review it. And then they'll follow it up by going, we've now been over it, here are our proposed deductions. But I know a lot of agents don't want to give the checkout report to the tenants until they propose deductions to tenants. Because I know one of the things that we've seen is up until now, our platform would instantly share it. And what we did see, particularly with tenants, is they'd read a checkout report, and before an agent or landlord had even decided if there were going to be any deductions, we already had tenants emailing back going, well, hold on, I don't agree with this. And I've seen this in the report, and I don't agree with that. And so, yeah, what this does is agents do have the choice to postpone that, because actually it might not matter. The checkout report might say there's lots wrong with the property, but your landlord might be about to refurbish it or sell it or move back in, and he doesn't care. So, you know, so for agents, they can postpone it. But we've captured the checkout report. We distribute it when agents want. We capture the meter reading information. So if I come in here, whatever meter reading info is in the report, the reading, the meter number, and the photo of the meter reading, that is all captured in our system. That's made available to all parties, so tenants and landlords can easily close or set up utility bills. Again, it removes any of that debate about what date a bill closes on, what actually was the reading. It's an independent record that's there for all to see. And then the only difference is if this had come through, these would actually say imported, and there'd be some data still to add on to these. So what we'll pull through is the category, the description, a description of it. If an inventory clerk puts an amount in Inventory Hive, which they can, but it's not mandatory, if there's an amount put in on the report, that gets pulled through. If that's left blank, then this would be manually completed. It will reference a reference point in the report itself. As an agent, you can add other evidence to this. So you might say, well, actually, in the check-in report, point 1.2 will show that that was spotless. And then you can also, you don't have to, but you can reference tenancy clauses. So we've got a part in settings where you can pre-populate your really popular tenancy clauses that relate to deposit deductions. And let's be honest, for most agents, 5 or 6 clauses is probably going to cover 95% of their deductions, because it's going to be cleaning, returning of keys, garden maintenance, rent arrears, and whatever else. But, you know, 4 or 5 clauses can be pulled in, and if they click that, any evidence, any photos captured within the report are pulled through. But again, an agent can add to that. So, you know, tenants like to have things substantiated. So it's, oh no, that's a broken mirror. That is not the one I wanted to put on there. Bear with me 1 second. So let's say you've got a quote or a receipt for that cleaning job. Again, just to legitimize it, you can upload that. And so you've got your 2 deductions. You've got your tenancy clause here, which again, in the settings, you can actually, an agent can copy and paste the wording of that particular clause. And again, it comes back to all evidence and facts in one place. Yes, your tenant can go and read through your tenancy agreement, find M1 and read that that is what it says. But the point is, everything they need to know is right there in front of them. And so, you know, we're going to sign off this. We're going to skip the landlord approval for the purpose of today. And I'm just going to quickly show you guys. We're not going to hang around in the system too long. I'm just going to come in here. I'm just going to refresh this. And so I'm just going to quickly show you guys. This is the email a tenant will get when they get the proposal. So straight away within the email, it itemizes what those deductions are. So before a tenant has even logged into the platform, they already know what they're going to be looking at. And if we then open that, if we go on as a tenant, and here we go. So this is how a tenant is presented an issue. And this is a very difficult proposal for a tenant to now argue with. So we've got an amount, a description, we've got all the documents it references in here. So the check-in report, 1.2, so they can click. I'm not going to open these documents now, but you can just click on that. It opens as a PDF and you can find the points where evidence is. You know, you've got your tenancy agreement. You can click on the evidence to open it and see it in full detail. That's very hard to argue with. You know, if you've got a quote here that's, or an invoice here that's saying it cost 120 quid to do that, and you've got a check-in report saying it was spotless or even a brand new oven when you moved in, how are you going to argue with that? You know, and so what we see is between 70 and 75% of every single deduction proposed on our platform in the last 15, 16 months has been approved with no form of renegotiation from the tenant at all. Wow. Because how do you argue with that? There's no emotion in there. I'm not being told off for not having cleaned my oven whilst I lived there. I'm not being told off for not having cleaned it now. I'm not being told that, you know, you're disappointed in me. All I'm being presented with is the contract says you should have done this, the evidence supports it, and here's a quote, And guess what? Yeah, I'm going to agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, you know, just for sake of argument, if a tenant doesn't agree, so let's say we've got the garden on here, we've proposed 240 quid, and maybe a tenant's never used a gardener and they think, Jesus, that sounds expensive. They shop around, the details of the job, they get some quotes, you know, they can come in here and they can decline and they can counter propose. So they can say, oh, actually, you know, I'm going to counter propose 180 quid and found better quotes, whatever it is. And again, we're encouraging the tenant to respond in a facts-based manner. Yes, we can't control exactly what a tenant writes in the response box. I mean, obviously, we've got filters to look out for offensive language or anything. But other than that, you know, a tenant can write, oh, I'm not paying for this, it's not fair. You know, they can write what they want in there. But what we're encouraging them to do is to liaise with you in a fact-based manner. So they can reference inventory pages, they can reference checkout reports, they can reference contract clauses, they can upload their own evidence. If they have factual bits of information that they feel supports their point of view, then that's exactly what we're encouraging. Again, rather than a tenant to engage in an emotive, it's not fair, that's far too much money. You know, and so coming back into the platform, if I just quickly refresh, we're not going to go any further than this. We're just going to show you what that response looks like on the agent dashboard, and then we'll come back to just us guys. So you can see the clean's been approved. Here's the overgrown garden in negotiating stage, and again, there's everything we've evidenced. So again, for you as agents, you take over a file from someone, you have to cover because someone left the company or sick or gone on holiday. Everything you need to know about this deduction's right there in front of you. Full description, all the evidence, the conversation to date, whatever fields the person's filled out are populated. They only filled out 2, so there's no other fields in there. But again, you have a chat with your landlord, look, 180 quid, that's not a bad, you know, that's not a bad offer, let's go with that. And there you go, off you go, and off you go on to finalizing deposit refund. And then with our TDS custodial integration, literally all an agent has to do is just sign off on the final balance. So just double check they're happy with those figures. And that's it. That's a tenancy conclusion done. Our integration with TDS sends that breakdown. Let's go back, just us guys. There we go. Sends that breakdown off to TDS. TDS will independently verify that breakdown with the tenants, and then we'll distribute the funds directly and close off the deposit certificate. So you no longer need to separately go into a TDS dashboard and submit that information online. It all happens seamlessly through there.
Well, you know, what I think is really neat about that as well is, you know, I've been reading a book over the past month or so about the, you know, it's called the Effortless experience, and it's like the most overriding thing with that is that we live in an age now where people want self-service. They want to be able to, you know, find the answers to their own problems and fix them without having to go through phones and chats and conversations and emails and all of that stuff. You know, I suppose you've only got to look at silly things like YouTube. You know, if you want to know how to do something these days, like wire a plug, you can hit a YouTube video and you've got someone there showing you how to do it. You get on and do it yourself, don't you? And I think we're in that culture, and that's, as you say, as well as removing the emotion, people can self-service, or tenants can self-service that checkout process at their convenience, which is a big thing. And I think, you know, often it's overlooked, isn't it? You know, businesses often go for those wow moments when actually people just want the basics done, you know, when it suits them
as well, right? So something we're looking at doing at Base, we've recognized that probably 80, at least 60, maybe 80% of our deductions fall into like 5 categories. So cleaning, personal effects or rubbish left behind, moldy mastic, particularly in the bathroom. Those are probably the top 3, right? So we're actually now looking at creating a little Base video that is just going to be, hi guys, you know, here are our top 3 most common things that we deduct, that we charge tenants for when you move out, and here's how you avoid that charge.
Yeah, like you say, it could be,
but if not, make sure they match the checklist. You know, don't think that just because you move out of a property, you can leave behind everything you no longer want under the premise of, oh, but I thought the next guys would want it. No, they don't want your second-hand shoes. They don't want your cracked bedside lamp. They don't want your 10-year-old computer. The amount of stuff we see left behind, your half-drunk bottle of craft gin. They don't want it, you know. And again, and multi-mastic again is probably, you know, you guys I think will both agree this has got to be a really, really common one, because it's a very avoidable thing. Tenants get very frustrated about it, but actually there's a really good fix. As long as you do this a day or two before you move out, you just soak a bit of tissue in bleach and leave it on the mastic, and it's perfect. You know, unless you've really, really ruined that bathroom. Oh, and the other one, light bulbs. The fact that tenants think that light bulbs mysteriously change themselves. So when you go to them, oh, we've got to replace 5 light bulbs, that's £5 a pop, that's 25 quid. And your tenant comes back screaming blue murder, going, hold on, I can buy 5 light bulbs for £3 at Asda. And it's like, right, but how do those light bulbs get from Asda to the flat and into the light? You know, and I love some of the comments we've had, which is like, oh, can't you know, one of you guys could just pop down there, can't you? And it's like, yes, we can, and that's what the extra money's for. So those are the sort of things that we're going to put in a video. You know, so we're doing as much as we can as the depository, but for agents as well, look at it, because, you know, we put that video out to tenants, you know, on top of what the platform does. We now get to a deposit deduction, and that tenant has 4 deductions, which are light bulbs, rubbish, cleaning, and whatever the other one I said was. You know, what is their argument? What is their argument? Because you've got weekly emails to prepare yourself. We've even given you a video highlighting those things with tips on how to avoid that. You know, maybe arrange a rubbish collection, or, you know, I do love the fact that people are like, oh yeah, it was bin day 2 days before we moved out. So, you know, we decided it would be fine to leave 10 sacks of rubbish outside the building for 5 days, which I'm sure left, you know, made your neighbours really happy. That was a lovely welcoming to the new tenants, this collection of garbage out front of the building. You know, so all these sort of things. But yeah, I think evidence, information, educate and inform. But look, educating and informing tenants is difficult. I've been on a massive journey with educating tenants. We've tried all sorts of things at Base. We used to write, you know, we used to have this sort of 3-4 page document we used to send out. We tried sending YouTube links. I was involved for a while with an organisation called the Tenant's Voice, and that was a lot about educating tenants on their rights and responsibilities. The reality is, with the greatest of respect to tenants, and I myself am a tenant, so I include myself in this category, a veteran tenant of 22 years, 23 years and counting, is that actually tenants don't give a shit until it affects them, pardon my French, but they don't want to read 5 pages of notes, because actually none of it might apply to them. They might move out and hand that property back immaculate and get their money back in full, and as such they've saved an hour of their life reading your very, very boring 5-page document. What tenants want to know is the information that directly impacts them at the time that it impacts them, and just the information relevant to that. So that's one of the things that we've tried to do, and working with you guys is about presenting that critical piece of information there at the moment that it's needed. And if you can fill around that, like I said, you know, if you can take a bit of initiative as an agency to go, well, yeah, actually this, you know, these are the patterns we've noticed with deposit deduction. So let's add another layer on top and let's educate. And so with that belt and braces approach, can a tenant ever really complain when you charge them £5 for a light bulb, or when you charge them 100 quid to go and have all their rubbish picked up?
I think you're absolutely right there as well, Kristjan. I think the key to that as well, you've hit the nail on the head, because you know, let's face it, when you're moving into a house and out of a house, it's an emotive time. You don't have a lot of time on your hands, and therefore it is about, you know, how the information's communicated in a convenient way at the right time. It's about a simple touch point, like on your email there, it's literally one button, isn't it? You know, the tenant gets the email, there's one button to press, it opens up a quick screen, they can add some comments, take a snap, or yeah, I approve that. You know, they're not necessarily going to debate, and that's probably why your deduction rate there is so high, because they don't have to, you know, schedule a phone call or play email tennis for an hour and a half, 2 hours. You know, it just makes it quick and it's convenient.
how many agents have been tearing their hair out with, you know, not being able to get hold of a tenant or landlord when they need to, or being hounded in particular by a tenant about where's my deposit, and it's like, yeah, hold on, I've got to, you know, there's 3 critical things I've got to do before we can talk about returning your deposit. The amount of energy and time and resources an agent spends just on that, you know, what we recommend as best practice is the guys who do this, and it's typically either an admin person or a property manager. We recommend as much as possible these guys do a dashboard review just before they finish their day. Quickly go on the dashboard, see if there's any outstanding tasks, and do them. And the reason for that is most people, as we all know, most people don't interact that much during the day unless you're furloughed. You've got nothing better to do. But for most people, and let's talk about the normal world that we're hopefully returning to at some time in the near future. Most people don't touch this stuff during work. You know, you're at work, either you're not allowed to or you're just not interested. It's when you get home and you flop on that sofa that you go, right. And so how this platform also helps is obviously we take this evidence-based approach, but hopefully these things are sort of nurturing themselves whilst you're asleep. You go home for the night. You've updated all your tenancies to where they should be. Overnight, you've got your tenants and landlords going, oh, yeah, I approve that. I agree to that. I've booked this. I've booked that. You come in the morning, your 20 tenancies that you're currently progressing, great. Everything's moved on a step. 3 of those are now ready for refund. You know, 4 of those you're in the deduction stage. You know, 2 of those, 70% of the deductions have been agreed, and you're now into the more contentious ones that, let's be honest, as an agent, you knew were going to be the ones that were going to be contentious anyway. And then you can really drill down and spend your time and energy where it's really needed. Yeah. And I think, you know, and another thing we worked on, obviously, with the evidence and with our TDS integration is that, you know, in the rare occasion that a tenancy does go to dispute, our integration with TDS removes that need to manually submit a dispute file. Because our platform gathers all the relevant evidence through the negotiation process, you now no longer need to repeat that. You don't need to trawl through 20 different emails and compile everything you've ever said into a document and all the evidence. Everything's there. So literally all our platform will ask is if there's anything further to add. And if you've used our platform correctly, there shouldn't be anything to add. So to submit a dispute file from our platform to TDS is about 3 clicks. You know, it's what is on average a 45-minute. You know, we did a quick bit of research about a week ago, and the average agent came back saying that the average dispute was about 45 minutes to an hour's work. I mean, obviously, others came back going, yeah, average, but I've had ones that have taken me a whole day. Yeah. You know, and with us, it's literally 3 clicks. And
yeah, I think there's that element of convenience, isn't there, Kristjan, about, you know, like you say, being able to send it in, it's efficient. But there's also that transparency, because you know that what's being sent to TDS, the tenant has seen, right? They've seen that proposed deduction. They've had a chance to respond. They might have negotiated. They might have commented on it. They've provided what they want. And all of that is just getting packaged up and sent to us for a decision.
Yeah. And again, you get a factual report. So you don't only get the evidence, you can see that timeline of conversation. So if you've got a tenant saying, oh, this landlord's really dodgy, he's been dragging his feet, he's taken ages to reply to me every time, and then you get that report and you can actually see, actually, the agent or the landlord's responded next day every single time, and it's actually the tenant that's taken 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days to return each time. It starts to give a bit of context to how much you can believe what's being said and what's on the document. And I know for you guys as well, we worked really hard to make sure that evidence is presented in a really concise way. So it actually makes it really easy for your ICEs to review and adjudicate those case files.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Faster adjudication as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What that's what it's an evidence-based process, and you want the facts, right? You know, as you say, you can get submissions sent in with, you know, hundreds of pages of correspondence from the entirety of the tenancy talking about a leak and a damaged toilet and all maintenance issues, but that's not actually relevant to the issue at hand. What we're looking for is, as you say, what's being claimed, why is it being claimed, and what's your evidence to support it? And if the tenant disputes that claim, why do they dispute it? Do they think it's too high? Do they disagree? Do they not agree with, for example, the contents of the inventory report? And all of the work that, you know, Inventory, Hive and yourself at Depository are doing is to eliminate, you know, to narrow the reasons that a deduction can be can be disputed by a tenant, because actually, you know, they're in a position now where they've seen the claim, they've seen the evidence, and they've had their chance to say why they dispute it. And when it gets to us, it's just looking at those facts and reaching a decision.
And it's just, you know, one really quick point to add on that there as well, and that's, you know, the approach that we've taken with Inventory Hive, with the templates we build into the system, is we are very specific. So we'll say things like on the ceiling, off the shelf, when they add the report, we'll say the ceiling's free of marks and mold. Now, I know a lot of people that create inventories will often say, you know, it's good unless, you know, good cleanliness and condition unless otherwise stated. And I think that's fine. But I think if you are explicit with every item to say to door it's free of marks and scratches front, side, reverse, that often engages the tenant and gives them a benchmark at the beginning. So when they read it on our process, they can say, you know, we default, yes, they agree to that, but it's very explicit. So they go, actually, there are some scratches. They can hit no and add the comment. And that, just a simple thing like having that template as a base point, you avoid the need for that tenant to, at the end of it, to say it was like that when I moved in, because if they do feedback on genuine issues, there's less chance of them again, you know, pushing back on any of that negotiation when it comes to checkout. So just simple little things sometimes can make a big difference at the end. And I suppose the overriding thing here is all about, you know, communication, isn't it, at the right time, the right, you know, at the right touch point in a simple way. All of those, you know, can create a much better experience, can't they, for the tenant, and ultimately, let's face it, from an agent's perspective, save you loads and loads of time.
Well, that's it. So, I think you know, just to summarise, I think we're coming up to time on this now. But I think, you know, what we've highlighted here is really an evidence-based, fact-based approach is the best standard for everyone, and it delivers the best route and outcome. So what it does at the very offset is it presents your agency in a very professional manner. So first of all, what you're presenting to your landlord, fact, evidence, report based. Equally, your tenant, they're not getting some long emotional email or just a list of costs and we're taking half your deposit, you know, whichever the flip side is. Again, it's very contextual, evidence, professional, documented. So as a tenant, you know you're dealing with a competent, professional, thorough outfit. You know, and then if that communication breaks down and you get to an adjudication, we're making sure that TDS are given the evidence they need to make a really accurate adjudication of that as quickly as humanly possible. So, you know, we're taking out the emotion. It's all about contracts, legality, evidence, speed, efficiency, and transparency. And you tell me any business, any consumer, any client that doesn't want that from from a process, and also from a member of staff as well, who doesn't just want to be able to do their job without being dragged through an emotional wrangler. I mean, again, as agents, you tread that impossible line sometimes. You know, sometimes the landlords and tenants are lovely and understandable, and it's all very civil and convivial and blah, 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 and everyone loves you, and it's great. There are lots of times where it isn't. You know, and as an agent, you do get stuck in that sometimes quite impossible middle of the road situation of your paying client telling you, rah, we're going to take X, Y, Z, and your tenant going, no bloody way in a million years he's taking a penny for my deposit. And what better way to sort of ring fence your position in the middle, but going, guys, it's not about what you want. It's about what the contract says, what the law permits, and what the evidence supports. And that is it, pure and simple. All right. So I think on that, we will round it up, guys. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you much for people, the patience hanging for us at the start, and my problems with being able to hear anything. That was exciting. But hopefully lots of information there about how our platform delivers on that, but is massively dialed up and supercharged with our integrations with Inventory Hive and with TDS, just delivering a really efficient agency operation that delivers the same experience time again in an efficient, time-saving manner, and presents the company in a really professional, transparent, evidence manner. Guys, thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for your patience. No problem. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Cheers.
On before you go, because I have to do the promo bits. So we do have, if you are interested in any of our products, whether you are a TDS member already or not, if you're with another deposit scheme and you're thinking about migrating, I can wholeheartedly say we've had several clients now migrate to TDS to use our platform, and the feedback of that migration sort of process and team has been incredible. Agents have been blown away about just how simple TDS make that process. If you do inventories in-house, or you work with an inventory clerk, or you're thinking about bringing them in-house, or you just want your inventory clerk to step up their game, Inventory Hive is an incredible solution. Do reach out and have a chat. I know I did an online demo with Inventory Hive, their platform, and you get to do the whole experience of being a tenant, being a landlord, and seeing what that journey's like. Super transparent, really easy to follow, and again, just ticks all those boxes. No one has any excuses for not knowing what they should have done and what was evidence, what, where, how, and why. And of course, we're here, the Depository. Give us a shout if you want to transform your end of tenancy process. Reach out to any of us, and by all means, you know, reach out to one of us. If you want to talk to others, just let that organization know, and we will refer you over. If you want an individual bespoke demo, we do demos showing the Inventory Hive plugin, and I promise to make sure I link it with the right tenancy next time, so you see just how amazing that integration really is. But yeah, do reach out to all of us. We all work very closely with one another. We can refer you to one another and get a group demo or bespoke demos done up, whatever you see fit. But that's it. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Rich, Michael, thank you ever so much.
Cheers,
and
mate.
have a good rest of the week, guys. Take care.
Andrew, take care.
Take care, guys.
Yeah. Bye.